All right, we are back. We are back again. I'm playing just a little bit of Lord of the Rings footage right here at the onset, just to let everyone know. Yes, we are again talking about the Lord of the Rings. Oh, man, just got punted off of one live stream. What the crud? Anyway, I guess Warner Brothers doesn't want me to be talking about their amazing property that they own. And yeah, so you know what? Fine, fine. I'll talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it to the footage from Ori and the Will of the Wisp. There we go. How about that? Let's see how they like them apples. And I like them apples well enough, I guess. Okay, so to reestablish what the heck I was talking about in the other stream that got taken down, the Lord of the Rings is really the defining story of the fantasy genre. It is so because it did so many things that no other writer had done up until that point. Yes, there were authors who were also pioneering what we now appreciate as fantasy before Tolkien arrived on the scene, and so many others have added their own incredible stories since Tolkien. However, again, what Tolkien did is not only did Tolkien have just the knowledge, the passion, and the perseverance that so many authors can really only dream of, but he also managed to bring together the primary genres that existed before fantasy truly became its own thing: science fiction, adventure, and horror. He brought them together and he married them around his very own from whole cloth fairy tale, which is There and Back Again, or The Hobbit, and matured it, transformed it into something else entirely, which became The Lord of the Rings. And so many other fantasy stories around that time, sure, they bring either together adventure and horror, or they have adventure and science fiction together, or science fiction and horror brought together. But almost no one else had ever managed to bring those three genres together and crown them with a fairy tale. And not only that, but Tolkien managed to do it on such a grandiose scale of storytelling, where everything is so complex, so well thought out, so intricate. The history is there, it's solid. The characters are powerful. The story is long and meaningful. Everything is so well put together and wrapped up together that you can't just simply take it apart and say, okay, this right here, this is a good standalone story, but everything else, yeah, that can just kind of go the way of the dodo. No, Tolkien's story is compelling because of what it all brings together in a way that had never been done before. And so Tolkien, being the one who did it first, and therefore also at that time did the best, but even since then has been one of the best examples of what you can do with fantasy. That is why he is the grandfather of fantasy. Now, so many other authors since then have added their own names to the amazing pantheon of great fantasy writers. And they've also brought in their own wonderful ideas and tales, which have helped the genre to evolve over time. But Tolkien did it first, and he did it so well that he continues to be not only a bar, but one of the highest bars in all of literature to clear. And that is why Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is truly, like, if you just want to be really, really simplistic about it, that is why Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is such a masterpiece. Now, TV account, what did you miss? You missed the other stream crashing and burning because Warner Brothers was like, yeah, no, we don't like the fact that you're showing stuff from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, the reason why I'm talking about Lord of the Rings right now and why the live stream is today rather than tomorrow is because I'm going to be going with my sister and her family to go and watch the re-release of the Lord of the Rings extended editions this Friday. It's going to be a 3-day affair. And I mean, sorry guys, I love you all and everything, but going to see the Lord of the Rings, the extended edition in theaters with family, that's a special thing. Lucid Star Mellow is hi, it's me from Star Drop Mellow account. Again, I'm trying to get back on Discord. All right. Then Lucid Star Mellows, make sure that you leave a comment on any one of our videos that you want to get back onto our Discord, and we'll make sure that you get that you get the link to get on. And again, for anyone else who also wishes to join Discord, just let us know that you would like to do that, and we'll quickly just run an interview to see how best we can serve you as either as an author, as an artist over our Discord, and then we'll happily invite you along for the ride. All right, so hello again. How goes it? Well, it's probably going to go way better now, just because. Yeah, just because I'm not showing the Lord of the Rings footage, which is a real pain because Lord of the Rings footage is so good, and it feels kind of silly to talk about how great the Lord of the Rings is while showing Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which is great in and of itself, but is no Lord of the Rings. And Stormcrow says, my Governor Mellon, I imagine that yes, Lord of the Rings is fantastic, but what was Aragorn's tax policy? Well, you know what? I would also like to know what Jon Snow's tax policy is, or what even was Robert Baratheon's tax policy, because that guy was definitely how was the kingdom still running? Even when, for instance, even in the first book, when Littlefinger opens up the ledgers to Ned Stark, and it's like, so this is where, this is the money, and where the money's been coming from, and what it's all been going to, and it's kind of hilarious because it becomes really apparent really quickly that George R. Martin also has no idea how to understand economics, because I am very sorry, but if you are spending 2 million gold crowns annually in an environment where people are like, oh my, I've never seen gold before, it's like you are doing stuff with money that is just dumb. It's just dumb. If you actually try to follow the economics of the Game of Thrones series, it becomes very apparent very fast that it just cannot work. Quick drinking contest between Gerson Boom and Gimli. Who wins? Gerson Boom. Gerson Boom wins. Why? Because he can do anything. I'll give Gimli good odds, but sorry, it's going to be Gerson Boom who wins that one. Also, funny thing is that the whole thing with the dwarves and drinking was something entirely made for the movie. While the dwarves love their home comforts and whatnot in the books, they are not themselves big consumers of booze. At least not what Tolkien shows. That is something that was made up by other fantasy creators over time. And that's actually something I did want to address as far as the Lord of the Rings goes, and its influence on other stories. So a lot of authors after Tolkien were like, you know what? Tolkien had the sauce. Everyone loves his work. So what can we do to try to replicate Tolkien's amazing works and make a big name for ourselves, and also make big money? Because if you're not making big money, it's kind of hard to live as an author. That's just the reality. Sorry, folks. And so a lot of authors took a very, very superficial look at what Tolkien had done and then tried to replicate it. This is where we get the grouchy old wizards, because, well, Gandalf was grouchy and old. It was all over the place. He's just a grouchy old wizard. Hey, Frodo Baggins, you must not do that stuff. And so nearly every wizard for the next 30 to 40 years, easy, and still even beyond that, are just grouchy old men. And as fun as that is, there's nothing bad with making a grouchy old man wizard for your story. it's probably way more accurate to describe Gandalf as overworked. He's not so much grouchy as he's just like, I need a break. I have been doing so much to try to save Middle Earth all these years, and it's just so hard because, well, I'm dealing with mortals like Denethor. So so people are like, hey, so Gandalf, very popular character, is just old and grouchy. So I will make my own wizards old and grouchy. Then and then people are like, dwarves. Well, these dwarves don't like elves. So therefore, dwarves should not like elves ever. Because Tolkien said so. And it's like, actually, when you go into the works of Tolkien's like, actually, the elves and dwarves in many cases got along really, really well. There are certain elves and dwarves who did not get along well. The reason why is history. And if you bother reading the history, it then all makes a lot of sense. If you don't read the history, then the animosity between elves and dwarves just feels like old blatant racism, which is what most fantasy writers have just decided to do, just blatant racism, and roll with that. But that was not Tolkien. And so that's something that people just don't understand unless they actually get deep into his works. He did such a great job of going deep into the history, of making sense why there's animosity, where animosity existed. And so for those, and so actually, quick little Lord of the Rings history lesson for those of you who don't know. The reason why there's such great animosity between the elves and the dwarves comes down to the first age of Middle Earth, where the elves who had returned from Valinor, seeking vengeance against the devil Morgoth for killing the High King of the Noldor and stealing the 3 holy Silmarils. They're there for on a quest for revenge, and the Noldor and the dwarves actually shared a lot of interests. They loved the earth. They loved living in caves. So there was a lot of elves who actually enjoyed living in caves. They loved craftsmanship. They were proud folk. They prized ingenuity and creativity. And so the Noldor and the dwarves got along exceptionally well. The problem is that the quest for the Silmarils got these holy, beautiful gems into the hands of people who were just so mesmerized by their beauty, by their holiness, and were effectively then corrupted by lust. When the dwarves began lusting for the Silmaril that had been retrieved from the crown of Morgoth by Beren and Luthien, which is Tolkien's greatest love story, absolutely should read it if you haven't read it. The dwarves and the elves both became corrupted and were jealous of this gem, leading to the dwarves attacking Luthien's father, Thingol, murdering him, leaving to a sack of the kingdom of Menicroft, destroying an entire kingdom of elves, leading them to the Ents, having the very first Entmoot, and thereby destroying an entire dwarven kingdom to get revenge for the sack and slaughter that had been wreaked upon the elves. So the dwarves are like, forests are bad because forests can come to life now and kill us. Yikes. And elves are like, those greedy dwarves, they killed King Thingol for the Silmaril, while then kind of playing it off that their own king had been corrupted by lust for the power and beauty of the Silmaril. And so the animosity, it just comes from a really sad place, because there didn't need to be this rivalry between elves and dwarves, and it all came about because of the unrighteous vengeance that the Noldor were seeking for the death of their High King and for the theft of the Silmarils by Morgoth. So, boom, there's your long history. Now then, as much as I love stuff like Dungeons and Dragons, pray show me anywhere in any major Dungeons and Dragons campaign that gets anywhere even close to that kind of intricacy for history and to make sense of why two races don't like each other. Most authors just don't do it because, again, they took a very superficial look at Tolkien and just tried to replicate what he did without understanding why he did what he did, or how he came to do what he did. Did what he did. Woohoo! That sounds like the beginning of a song right there. Art says, hey, didn't expect to stream tonight. Yeah, this is because tomorrow I can't do the stream because I'm going to be seeing The Lord of the Rings return to the big screen. Woohoo! For its 25th anniversary. Okay, hear me out. The One Ring is dropped into hometown. Who falls to its temptation the fastest? For any authors out there, if you want to know characters' flaws real quick, give them the One Ring. Stop banning Susie from free ham sandwich day, you fools! Gandalf probably. Stupid fatty lizard. She ate all the fishes. Now then, so answering that question, who would probably be corrupted the quickest by the One Ring? Oh man, with what we know of the story so far, I'm sorry, Asgore, but you are my first you are my first one to offer up to the One Ring in terms of who would probably be corrupted by it. How dare Smeagol insult Susie? I agree. Smeagol should not insult Susie. And come up with a good Susie retort against Smeagol. Also, we need like a good canon voice for Susie. There's a lot of great voice actors out there who've all had their own interpretations of Susie, but I think there'd be a good one. There's got to be a really good one out there who can really capture I think Susie's personality throughout the games. In any case, man, Susie versus Gollum. If it's like chapter 1 or 2, Susie versus Gollum, Gollum is getting his head rocked by Susie. Sorry, that's just going to happen. It's going to hurt. If it's chapters 3 and after Susie dealing with Gollum, Susie's going to pull an absolute Frodo and try to do everything that she can to help this poor monster out. Which is one of the reasons why Frodo is such a great character. As a young kid, as a teenager, I did not appreciate just how heroic of an effort Frodo put into trying to redeem Gollum and where that even came from. Dark Sage says I don't know his name. Smeagol. Yeah, you got it right. Spiegel. Spiegel, the mirror. It's German for mirror. Dungeons and Dragons back in the day had a really cool reason why orcs and elves hated each other. Basically, the elf god screwed over the orc god first, and he got pissed off. Which, okay, yeah, say the OG Dungeons and Dragons stuff. They had some good stuff for their for their different modules and lore, but excuse me. But again, like people nowadays trying to again replicate kind of what Tolkien did, most people again just are way too superficial with their understanding of Tolkien and just kind of run with that. Like I'm looking, for instance, at the Shannara Chronicles. The Shannara Chronicles to me are just an absolute travesty because it comes from a total misunderstanding of why the Lord of the Rings is the way that it is, why it operates the way that it does. And again, it's just basically like, oh, if I need to have a wizard, I should make him old and grouchy, like Gandalf. Yeah, that's a wizard. That's a wizard. Tia again says, Red reading Lackadaisy and people saying not much happens. Why? I think its pacing is like that of a crime drama. TV account, yeah, that's the answer why. Lackadaisy is at its heart a crime drama set during the late 1920s, early 1930s. And here's the thing, that bootlegging was not like Peaky Blinders all the time. There's a lot of interpersonal stuff that's going on. Lackadaisy at its heart is actually a tragedy. The story is a tragedy. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that or appreciate that. Dark Sage says, I could post my interpretation of Susie's voice on the Discord server if it's permissible. Yeah, go on ahead. I'd love to see what your interpretation of Susie's voice would be like, Dorcas Daydreams. All right, hey, Chris, where did Lancer Light come from? Susie, probably. All right, Lancer would probably be all like, hey, here's the smelly boy. Right, or maybe Gollum would be Ugly Daddy, because you got Real Daddy, you got Appointed Daddy. Maybe Gollum would be like Ugly Daddy. Kara Holiday, in place of a man who speaks in hands, you would have a president, cold and regal as winter. All shall love me and despair. Actually, that's really good. I like that one, Stormcrow. Ashley Birch, who did Chloe Price from Life is Strange, is my headcanon voice for Susie. Outside that, I always imagine Susie sounding like a young smoker chick. Yeah, you know. Yeah, like I just like I don't even know. Let's see here. You know, I would say that the looks of Brie Larson would almost make me think of what Susie's voice should be, but Brie Larson actually has too high pitched of a voice to really fit Susie in my mind. So just thinking of voice actors out there. You know, I think Marisha Ray could actually do a good would probably be a really good choice for a voice actor to portray Susie. If such a glorious thing would be possible, I would try to get Marisha Ray. It could happen. Carol would be a great antagonist to Gandalf. Yeah, she doesn't even need magic to make his life miserable. uh, so, hey, case getting back in line. Yeah, if you were to drop the One Ring into hometown, I think that poor Asgore is going to be the first one to really fall victim to its influence. As much as I love Asgore, that's just I see that being just the most likely outcome. Uh, then let's see here. Coming back to my absolute gushing of the Lord of the Rings. So, Tolkien. Another reason why the Lord of the Rings is stands as just this absolute high bar of fantasy. What people strive to achieve. Why people are measured against it is because, excuse me, is because Tolkien was really able to make these worlds feel lived in. Like there's all different kinds of great fantasy stories out there that you can pop in and enjoy, but not many fantasy worlds really feel real. And Tolkien goes to great length to make his world feel real. And I know that leads, for instance, to a lot of people saying that Tolkien just does way too much explaining. However, I want to take a moment to absolutely refute that. So I have right here in front of me the Fellowship of the Ring. Let's get this particular edition. So this one came out right alongside the release of the movies. So this is a 2000. This is effectively a 2001 copy of the Fellowship of the Ring. And so it's got the prologue, which is all the history. But if you decide to just jump all over that and go into book one of the Fellowship of the Ring, it starts on page 21, a long expected party, where we're given a load of introductions to various Hobbit characters, to Bilbo, to Gandalf, to Frodo. And people are like, oh man, he just goes so long in the description. It's like 50 pages before anything happens. Wrong. By within 10 pages, you already have the great moment from the movies where Bilbo. No, fine. I'll just read it. I'll just read it right here. By the ninth page, we're already into the thick of it, where you have where the movie really begins to pick up with its energy after you've been introduced to the hobbits and to Gandalf, where Bilbo is before his partygoers. My dear Bagginses and Boffins, my dear Tooks and Brandybucks, and Grubs, and Chubs, Broses, Hornblowers, Bulgers, Bracegirdles, Good Bodies, Brockhouses, and Proudfoots. Proud feet! Shouted an elderly hobbit from the back of the pavilion. His name, of course, was Proudfoot, and well merited. His feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table, which is right in the movie, that moment. Now, there's a little bit more because Bilbo's got a whole speech prepared, and the movie wants to get to the action as fast as possible, but we're already here. This is the 9th page. We're already about where the movie is, 9 to 10 minutes in. Like, this is actually, in terms of pacing, this is really good. And we've already established who 3 of our main characters are, what the Shire is like. We've gotten a chance to see the family drama within the Shire. We've even gotten the politics. When you have George R.R. Martin complaining, "Well, where's Aragorn's tax policy?" Hey, Martin, I want you to shush. I want you to shush your face, because within 10 pages of the Fellowship of the Ring, I get more politics than I got in the first 100 pages of a Game of Thrones. Thank you very much. And then of course we get to one of my favorite parts. I don't know half of you half as well as I would like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. This wasn't unexpected and rather difficult. There was some scattered clapping, but most of them were trying to work it out and see if it came to a compliment, which it is. It is absolutely a compliment, but it's actually a self-depreciating compliment. And then there's actually like a really bad joke that Bilbo throws in there to like basically make fun of everyone. And then he recounts a moment from The Hobbit. And then finally, I wish to make an announcement. He spoke this last word so loudly and suddenly that everyone sat up who still could. I regret to announce that, though, as I said, 11 years is far too short a time to spend among you. This is the end. I am going. I am leaving now. Goodbye. He stepped down and vanished. There was a blinding flash of light, and the guests all blinked. When they opened their eyes, Bilbo was nowhere to be seen. 144 flabbergasted hobbits sat back speechless. Old Odo Proudfoot removed his feet from the table and stamped. Then there was a dead silence until, after several deep breaths, every Baggins, Boffin, Took, Brandybuck, Grub, Chub, Burrows, Bulger, Bracegirdle, Brockhouse, Goodbody, Hornblower, and Proudfoot began to talk at once. And then the very next page, we get the confrontation between Bilbo and Gandalf. Like, when people are like, man, Tolkien just takes forever, it's time to describe stuff. No. One of the things that Tolkien did so well is what I like to call the economy of words. Tolkien made every word count. He was very specific with what he wanted to say. And Tolkien made sure that every word or combination of words in these full sentences would communicate as much detail, meaning, and characterization as possible, so you, as the reader, can firmly imagine everything that's going on. It all makes sense. You never feel lost, despite how complicated this world is. Its vast and rich history, its many peoples, its huge geography, all of this stuff. Tolkien wanted you to experience and understand it all. And so he chose all the right words. In a word, it's dense, but it's not a dense book. In fact, actually, if you combine all of the pages and even all of the words for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it is shorter than most big fantasy series or even other trilogies today. Tolkien was that good that he made every word matter. And that's hard. Because as an author, we actually like to get a little bit frivolous with our words. We like to wax eloquent. We like to do whatever it is that we want to do. We want to have fun with this fantasy world that we've created. And we oftentimes take up too much time to do all the things that we say that we want to do. Tolkien did not. That's one of the reasons why the Lord of the Rings trilogy reads so well, and why it feels like it takes 50 pages to get to where you want to go. If you're just like, oh my gosh, there's just so much information. It's very information heavy, and yet the pacing of these characters and what they're doing is so dang good. I'm going to read a little bit more, but first let me catch up with what you guys have posted here. Carol has her own Sauron in the form of the Knight. You know what? That is so good. Arts, I like that. I like that comparison. Yeah, basically the Knight is in a way kind of Carol's own Sauron, if we consider Carol as a Morgoth type, being the real one to pull all the strings, which so far that's kind of how she's been presented. I don't know. I don't know if that's really if she really is the one. We shall find out. Sure enough. Then Darkest Daydream says, my headcanon voice for Susie has been bouncing between different VAs, but my favorite consistently has been Michaela Laws, the voice of Frankie from Knights of Guinevere. You know, that would actually work pretty well. Stormcrow says, that's essentially the White Queen from about going at Gandalf. Liam Neeson for Asgore's voice. Get Lion Jesus for our GoDaddy. You know what? That would be awesome. I would love to have Liam Neeson voice Asgore. That sounds like it would work really, really well. Lucid Star Mel says, I want Susie to sound like one of those mean teenage girls. Like she is a popular school girl, but with a more raspy voice. That reminds me of a girl that I went to college with who, oh my gosh, listening to her talk was sometimes a bit of a chore because just how raspy her voice was. But she always loved to talk, so I got to hear a lot of it. So you mean to say that? I mean, I can't do it. Oh my gosh, if I try doing it, I'm just going to sound like I'm running out of breath. But she's like, so you mean to say that the army that sounds like that? I could not do it. It'll destroy my vocals, so I'm not going to try. Lars, in principle, I agree with you for Asgore. Whoever I want to say that I think Noelle would make an amazing target for the ring. All the emotional pain she has, Sauron would love her. You know what? And I agree with that. That's just why, like, Asgore would be the first of all to his temptations. Noelle would be one of the last people you want to have hold on to the ring because she, yeah, with everything that's going on with her and with the magical power that the ring would corrupt to its own purposes, Noelle would just be way too dangerous and deadly for really anyone else within hometown to deal with. Oh man, that'd be rough. Okay, so caught up with that to again kind of give an idea of the pacing, the pacing that we're dealing with, that we're dealing with here from Tolkien, and how he's able to make things just so rich. So if we come to the opening of A Long Expected Party, when Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Baggin announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 11th birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar, and had been the wonder of the Shire for 60 years, ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The riches he had brought back from his travels had now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels stuffed with treasure. And if that was not enough for fame, there was also his prolonged vigor to marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90, he was much the same as at 50. At 99, they began to call him well-preserved, but unchanged would have been nearer the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. It seemed unfair and that anyone should possess apparently perpetual youth as well as reputably inexhaustible wealth. It will have to be paid for, they said. It isn't natural, and trouble will come of it. But so far, trouble had not come. And as Mr. Baggins was generous with his money, most people were willing to forgive him his oddities and his good fortune. He remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except, of course, the Sackville Bagginses, and he had many devoted admirers among the hobbits of poor and unimported families. Boom, right there, politics. Politics. And it's not like you have these different political factions. It is politicking at its most base level, which is kids in a school classroom having to play with toys. And here you got the popular kid with the not so popular kids, and the other popular kids are jealous that this one popular kid is getting all the other unpopular kids together. That's politicking at one of its most basic levels. And we're going to see that kind of unfold even more in its own subtle way for the hobbits as the story continues. Tolkien has injected small town issues into one of the very first paragraphs, and if you know what a small town feels like, immediately that sentence should just hit hard. Noelle already uses rings as her weapon in the Dark World, so yeah, no, Dark Station's absolutely right. Noelle should not get the one ring. She's got too many bad rings. Poor girl. The eldest of these, and Bilbo's favorite, was young Frodo Baggins. When Bilbo was 99, he adopted Frodo as his heir and brought him to live at Bag End. And the hopes of the Sackville Bagginses were finally dashed. Bilbo and Frodo happened to have the same birthday, September 22nd. "You had better come and live here, Frodo, my lad," said Bilbo one day, "and then we can celebrate our birthday parties comfortably together." At that time, Frodo was still in his tweens, as the hobbits called the irresponsible 20s before childhood, and coming of age at 33. 12 more years passed. Each year, the Bagginses had given very lively combined birthday parties at Bag End. But now it was understood that something quite exceptional was being planned for that autumn. Bilbo was going to be 111, a rather curious number and a very respectable age for a hobbit. The old Took himself had reached 130. And Frodo was going to be 33, an important number, the date of his coming of age. Tongues began to wag in Hobbiton and Bywater, and rumor of the coming event traveled all over the Shire. The history and character of Mr. Bilbo Baggins became once again the chief topic of conversation, and the older folk suddenly found their reminiscence in welcome demand. No one had a more attentive audience than old Ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. He held forth at the Ivy Bush, a small inn on the Bywater Road, and he spoke with some authority. He had tended to the garden of Bag End for 40 years, and had helped old Holman in the same job before that. Now he was himself growing old and stiff in the joints, and the job was mainly carried on by his youngest son, Sam Gamgee. Both father and son were on very friendly terms with Bilbo and Frodo. They lived on the hill itself, in number 3 Bagshot Row, just below Bag End. "A very nice and well-spoken gentle hobbit is Mr. Bilbo, as I've always said," the Gaffer declared, with perfect truth, for Bilbo was very polite to him, calling him Master Hamfast, and consulting him constantly upon the growing of vegetables, in the matter of roots, especially potatoes. The Gaffer was recognized as a leading authority by all the neighborhood, including himself. "But what about this Frodo that lives with him?" asked old Noakes of Bywater. "Baggins is his name, but he's more than half brandy-buck, they say. It beats me why any Baggins of Hobbiton would go looking for a wife away there in Buckland, where folks are so queer." "And no wonder they're queer," put in Daddy Two-Foot, the Gaffer's next-door neighbor. "If they live on the wrong side of the Brandywine River and are right agin the old forest, that's a dark place, if half the tales be true." "And you're right, Dad," said the Gaffer. "Not that the Brandybucks of Buckland live in the old forest, but they're a queer breed, seemingly. They fool about on boats on that big river, and that isn't natural. Small wonder that trouble of it came, I say. But that as it may, Mr. Frodo's quite a nice young hobbit, as you could wish to meet. Very much like Mr. Bilbo, and in more than looks. After all, his father was a Baggins, and a decent, respectable hobbit was Mr. Drogo Baggins. There was never much to tell of him till he was drowned." "Drowned?" said several voices. They had heard this and other dark rumors before, of course, but hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again. So, already, right here, again, we're getting small town politics, we're getting history, we're getting introduced to one of our main characters, Bilbo, and we're beginning to get our introduction to Frodo and to a dark history. Is there some sort of mystery to be had there? No, not quite, but it's going to lead into a rivalry that's going to play out all the way until the end of the Return of the King between two different Hobbit families. Tolkien within that's just 2 pages. By the third page, we're going to get even more. And so within 10 pages, we're getting all this stuff about the hobbits. We're getting all of these important names, which are going to be who are going to play a role in whatever and whatever happens from this point on. It's a lot. Tolkien was very, very good at choosing what needed to be said and sparing the details where he needed to spare them, and otherwise giving you exactly what you needed everywhere else. That is a skill that not many authors have. And for instance, as much as I love Brandon Sanderson, I'm going to tell you this: Brandon Sanderson sometimes waxes way too eloquent and tries to go on for way too long. I love Sanderson's books. I love the Cosmere. But if you want to know who is more precise with their writing and who tells you what you really need to know when you need to know it, it's Tolkien and not Sanderson. That doesn't take away from Sanderson being a great writer. He is. He absolutely is. I think that within time, I think that it will be I think that people will talk more about Tolkien and Sanderson than they'd say Tolkien and Martin. George R. R. Martin's fate, as far as being a well beloved, well remembered author, is basically sealed by the fact that he hasn't finished his series and never will. And that just sucks right there. I have not read Patrick Rothfuss's series, The Kingkiller Chronicles. I'm waiting to see if he ever finishes his third book. And I know that people praise his prose, but if you never finish and the story's never complete, well, then what's there to ultimately be praised at the end of the day? What is your legacy? Tolkien finished his. And so, I mean, that's another thing. Tolkien actually finished his series. He said everything that he wanted to say. The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy is the story that he wanted to tell. There is far, far more, which is published by his son, Christopher Tolkien, but that was after Tolkien's death. When his son Christopher looked and saw, hey, wow, there's all this amazing stuff that my father made, and I want to share it with his fans because I know that they would love it. I wanted to get out there because I love this so much. And I think that, and he's like, and I could probably do my father proud with the proper edits to make sure that everything comes together. Fitting that the Thorn Ring is essentially the One Ring of Deltarune. Okay, so a video that I'm hoping to release tomorrow is actually going to dive into what Toby Fox does with items in Deltarune. And now, since we're having this discussion, I'd never expected us to go this way, but I'm now kind of kicking myself that it's not part of the recorded audio that I talk about the rings in Deltarune. So maybe that will have to be an addendum down the road, and we can make that a fun future conversation for Deltarune. The One Ring is real. It is. The One Ring truly is real. So, yeah, something to look forward to for tomorrow. That's my hope. My hope is that I can have that video done for you all by tomorrow, so that way you can watch it, enjoy it, and see what I've seen with what Toby Fox is doing when it comes to using items within a story. Because while using items, while making that part of the narrative is kind of simple enough, I guess, you can always take it to a higher level, and that's exactly something that Toby Fox has done. Man, just watching this battle with Mora, Sam versus Shelob. Oh man, imagine having to be the person that's to fight against Ungoliant. Yikes! You know, that is something that I would love to see. And that's something that's not talked about enough by people who are like, man, Ungoliant, she's so like evil and so powerful. Because she is. I mean, she takes on Morgoth and beats him. But then Ungoliant gets beaten by Balrogs. When Morgoth screams in terror at Ungoliant trying to kill him, the Balrogs come out the depths of hell and then frighten off Ungoliant because she's like, "Oh no, I can't fight against these guys." And the Balrogs come on for the kill. Uh, I would love a series done of the first age. Like, I know Rings of Power is an absolute waste and a loss, but man, if you could do a series on the first age, it'd be glorious. The Thorn Ring does put Noelle under a kind of spell like the One Ring does to those who utilize it. While the Thorn Ring makes Noelle numb to the concept of killing as a moral indecency, the One Ring makes one numb to sanity. Balrog, jump her! Yes. Yeah, oh my gosh. Again, I just want to see like a spider like this where you're seeing on the screen fighting against the Balrogs from the Lord of the Rings. Just like that would be epic. It'd be so epic. And yes, actually, and Arts, you bring up an excellent comparison right there. How Thorn Ring makes Noelle numb to the reality of what she's dealing with, of being used as a tool by the player, being used to murder innocent Darkners, all for the sake of power. But the power to do what exactly? And the One Ring makes people numb to the negative effects of their own desires. So, like for instance, Boromir wanting to save Gondor from destruction is a very noble and good desire. It's a very positive thing. However, what the One Ring corrupts of that desire is, if you wish to save Gondor, you must have power. And by having that power, then you will be able to save the people you love. But how then do you get that power? Oh, you get that power by sacrificing your morals and your goodness to Sauron's temptations, to his very soul, in order to get power. And that's just, well, obviously that's not a good thing. And so that's what the One Ring does. It tempts people with their greatest desire and gives them a way to get it, and makes them again numb to the consequences of that desire. Which is why when Sam wears the ring going into Mordor, you actually get, like, in my opinion, one of the best moments of the series, where Sam feels and hears the temptation of the One Ring, calling him to claim it so that way he can be the world's greatest gardener and turn Mordor itself into an absolute paradise. And he can do it with the One Ring. And Sam, being just the ever good hobbit that he is like, he's like, no, I can't trust you because you're the ring and I'm in Mordor. If I put on the ring, then the Dark Lord will see me and will know that I'm here, and that could lead to all these bad things. And on top of that, I just know you're going to betray me. Also, I came here to destroy the ring, not to. It's like Sam is just being all just like logical and not small-minded or simple-minded, but just very factual about it all. That the One Ring doesn't have that tempting power over him like it would have over Boromir and Denethor. However, what Sam begins to feel while bearing the One Ring is he gets to feel the absolute exhaustion of pure evil around his neck, and what it does to him, what it does to Frodo. So he gets to experience that. And one of the things that Tolkien himself believed in was how evil's presence itself could have an adverse effect on you, even if you didn't give into it. And so even though Sam and Frodo don't give into the temptation of the One Ring, evil still has this very corrosive and weakening effect on them, breaking them down, causing them to go into depression, to doubt, to mistrust. and so forth. And it's particularly hard on Frodo because he's been wearing the ring for far longer than Sam has. And one of the things that what actually, you know what? Okay. Ugh. I'm going to pull this out because if you haven't seen my video on why taking the Eagles to Mordor why taking the Eagles to Mordor doesn't work, I am going to tell you guys in this live stream because it's important. Tolkien actually thought that through. And Tolkien would have hoped that you guys were that his readers were smart enough to realize that he gave them the answer. I'm Omega. Given what we've learned from the latest ARG, I'm scared to find out what Noel with the ring will do. Oh, oof. Yes. You know what? I'm just going to say this. I don't think that we're quite ready for the weird route of chapter 5. I think it's going to be really depressing, and it's also going to fuel the shipping wars in a way that we're not ready for either. Anyways, that being said, okay. So, Mount Doom. So, why is it that you can't just simply fly the ring to Mordor? Why can't you just simply take the Eagles there? Well, first off, the moment you try to cross into Mordor, there's actually a magical barrier that alerts the fortresses that you've crossed. On top of that, you've got the ring wraiths, which on their krakens can fly as fast as the eagles. So that's probably not a really great idea. Plus, on top of that, Sauron in the book can still take on a certain amount of physical form. He actually does this when the ring is destroyed, trying to kill Aragorn and the armies of the West by transforming himself into this great shadow, this giant of shadow, and he tries to bear down on them and kill them before Ilúvatar sends a wind and blows him away. So Sauron can actually take a certain kind of physical form and could still interact with anyone who tried to bring the ring directly to Mordor. Basically, if you come by eagles, Sauron will see you, he will know you, and he can intercept you. And if you are not basically one of the Eldar, one of the greatest elves of all time, yeah, you cannot just fight Sauron one-on-one, or even with a small group. You will lose. You will lose to him, even when he's in a weakened state. Now then, as Frodo and Sam finally get to Mount Doom, this is not in the movie. This is here in the book. The path climbed on. So this is right after they've scared off Gollum, which in the movie, like, Sam slashes Gollum across the belly. Doesn't actually happen in the book. But Gollum has been kicked back, and they think they've beaten him. The path climbed on, so it bent again with a last eastward course, passed in a cutting along the face of the cone, and came to the dark door in the mountainside, the door of Sammath Nar. Far away now, rising towards the south, the sun, piercing the smokes and haze, burned ominous, a dull, bleared disk of red. But all Mordor lay about the mountain like a dead land, silent, shadow-folded, waiting for some dreadful stroke. Sam came to the gaping mouth and peered in. It was dark and hot, and a deep rumbling shook the air. "Frodo, master!" he called. There was no answer. For a moment he stood, his heart beating with wild fears, and then he plunged in. A shadow followed him. At first he could see nothing. In his great need, he drew out once more the vial of Galadriel, but it was pale and cold in his trembling hand, and threw no light into that stifling dark. He was come to the heart of the realm of Sauron, and the forges of his ancient might, greatest in Middle-earth. All other powers were here subdued. Right there, even the light of one of the Silmarils could not illuminate Sauron's forges. Here in Sammath Nar, all other powers must bow to Sauron's. All other wills crumble before him here. And so, if you wish to actually bring the ring to destroy it, you can't just simply throw it into the volcano. It's made clear in the Fellowship of the Ring that the ring must be destroyed where the ring was forged, which is Sameth Nar. So you need to go into Sameth Nar to destroy the ring. But in Sameth Nar, all other powers bow to Sauron's, meaning you can't win. Sauron's will always break yours the moment you enter into his domain. So sure, fly the eagles, fly the eagles. Oh no, you're screwed. Because the only way that the ring could be destroyed was by accident when Gollum takes it from Frodo and trips and falls over the edge. Only an accident could have brought about Sauron's defeat because Sauron had laid his final security contingency so well. So, Tolkien knew what he was doing. Fun fact, the actor who played Sam in the films, Sean Astin, was also the voice of Raphael in the 2012 Nickelodeon Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. I did not know that. Funnily enough, that show also has a D&D episode. Wait, I've already said that in a past stream. I'm getting deja vu. Well, it's great to bring that up again, because that's a cool fact. I love it. But yeah. So again, why is it that we look at and revere Tolkien's work? This guy was incredible. He was remarkably thorough with the things that he wrote, and he had just for his time had done stuff that no other author had ever done before, and just done it with incredible skill. And very, very few authors since Tolkien have gotten anywhere close to achieving what he did with his series. Again, just the fact that he could put in a whole adventure with the politicking, with the magic, with a wide cast of characters, multiple timelines, all of this stuff. He did it in less words than A Wheel of Time, the Stormlight Archive, than A Song of Ice and Fire, or even the Shannara Chronicles. Tolkien did more with less. So, I mean, it will be like there will eventually come along another author who will create something comparable to Tolkien's work and could even surpass him. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And already congratulations to whichever author manages to do that. But it'll be incredibly hard to reach that bar and to clear it because, again, Tolkien was one of the absolute best. We are incredibly blessed and lucky to have his amazing works. And we're also incredibly blessed that he had a fantastic son, Christopher Tolkien, who allowed us to also have access to the rest of his legendarium, which is just such a phenomenal read. I love the Middle-earth lore. It says, here's a thought, Susie with the thorn ring. Oh, put a pin in that. Oh, because that, there's something to be said there. Art says, The Hobbit is a good example of doing more with less. Though The Hobbit being stretched out to a trilogy, oh my gosh, talk about stretching. Yeah, those movies would have been better as just 2 movies. What I probably would have done, like if it were me, I would have the first movie end with them reaching Beorn, and then the second movie obviously covering everything from Beorn to the Battle of Five Armies. And I know that there's a whole lot of like fun that they had along the way of, oh, look at this, we could do this tricksy thing here and there. But honestly, keep it short and simple. You can have 2 amazing 3-hour movies that cover 6 hours of story, and you can easily cover most of The Hobbit. Easy. Toxic Cruisy? Yes, Toxic Cruisy. Toxic Suit. Oh my gosh. Okay, so when it comes to when I think of like, for instance, giving Susie the thorn ring, So here's the reason why I think that it's not part of the plan to give Susie the thorn ring is because what Susie desires, like deep down, is way less selfish than what Noelle currently desires. Now, this is not a dig at Noelle as a character. This is not to say, oh, she's actually secretly bad and we should all hate her. But what Noelle wants is she wants to have her sister back or have a substitute for her sister. She wants the world back to the way it was before Des's disappearance. And I mean that's not a bad thing. It actually isn't. But what it is it's still selfish in nature. And the way that Noelle pines, for instance, after Susie, how she wants to have someone who will reaffirm her, that will make her feel better when she's scared. Becoming scared and everything is all about getting this other person that you love close to you. It's very centered on her. Now, while that would mean good things for other people, again, it's very self centered. Susie, on the other hand, actually wants to help other people. In chapter one, she's like, yeah, no, I'm not a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm not a hero. But the moment that she has a taste of real friendship, thanks first to Lancer and then to Chris and Ralsei, Susie's like, this is wonderful. This is amazing. Now, she's still selfish at the beginning of the second chapter, where she doesn't want to share the dark world or her adventures with anyone else other than Chris, because it's her thing. She's afraid that other people will take it away from her, and maybe even still to a certain extent, there is still that fear. But Susie, by the end of chapter two, has learned it's just so great being a hero. It's so great being friends with everyone. Why would why wouldn't I want to share this with other people? And so as a result, Susie, as the story continues on, starts becoming way more selfless. And so as a result, this ring which corrupts your intent, which dulls you to the effects of your choices. And while it does make you more powerful, well, why does Susie need to be more powerful? And here's an interesting subtle thing to think about. For instance, in chapter 4, with Susie wanting to get the axe of justice. I got this amazing axe, which is an incredibly powerful weapon. Why is it that she wants it? She wants it because it's cool. I mean, that's his baseline. She wants it because it's cool. But then she also wants power to help her friends and to help out the other Darkners, to save hometown. And so she wants this axe to get that stuff. She's going to get this axe. She's going to save her friends. She's going to save Toriel. She's going to beat that sucker of a roaring knight and end the whole nightmare. And true, yeah, it's a cool axe, and she does want to be a hero, but it's a way more selfless goal. It's something that is not centered on her. And so the thorn ring would not really work well on Susie, because again, why does she want power? She wants power to help out other people. And Susie has come to accept her feelings more and more as the story progresses. She would not want to lose that. Noelle doesn't mind going numb in order to get power. Why to get power? To, well, have what she wants. And so if Chris, for instance, were to try to put the thorn ring onto Susie, Susie actually would comply for a time, because it's Chris, it's her friend, She's going to do it. Okay, power, cool. We can beat the Roaring Knight. I think the moment that she became aware of how it made her feel, Susie has already demonstrated in game that she has the power of will necessary to kind of break the rules, to do her own thing. And she would absolutely take off the ring herself. Now imagine having Susie with the one ring. I think that Susie would very much be like Aragorn. It's like, you can't wield it. None of us can. And that's just to Sauron alone. And be like, yeah, I don't want this power. I don't want this power because it's not actually going to give me what I want. What does Susie want? Friendship. Susie wants to be the real and right hero. Which, again, bring it back to Lord of the Rings, that's kind of what Aragorn is after. Yeah, Aragorn wants to restore the kingdom. He wants to get back his claim to the throne and save his people. All good stuff. All good stuff. But Aragorn, as displayed throughout the trilogy, is a completely selfless character who is always striving to find what is right and what is best for everyone else. And it's that quality that allows him to beat the same temptations that brought down his forebearer, Isildur, and be the man necessary to give up the quest for the ring in order for Frodo to do what he's got to do, and then for Aragorn then to be perfectly positioned to help out elsewhere. If Aragorn had gone on with Frodo, the ring still would have gotten destroyed, but in the process, Rohan would have fallen. Gondor could have fallen. Because if Rohan fell to Saruman, there would be no aid coming to Minas Tirith from Rohan, and there would be no aid coming from Aragorn with the help of the armies of the dead going to taking the Dimholt road. If Aragorn had not done the selfless and right thing of letting Frodo go, the purpose of the quest to save Middle Earth would have been lost because the kingdoms of men would have been close to obliterated. And in the process, I mean, if you save the world, but the world's all in ashes, what exactly does that mean? And Tolkien makes a note of saying that even after the War of the Ring was done, there was still so much. There was a lot. There were still many wars that had to be fought, many people that needed to be beaten in order to secure the peace and prosperity of both Gondor and Rohan. And so again, like, Aragorn might not have known at the time, but by making the right decision, by making the selfless choice, he was setting up everything in the future for the quest to truly succeed by doing his part in saving the kingdoms of Gondor and Rohan, which is great. It is great to see the choices of a character have these long-reaching consequences that Tolkien explores through the deeds of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, as well as what happens with Merry and Pippin. The breaking of the Fellowship was absolutely necessary. And so even though it's tragic how Boromir falls, also the consequences of his choices are absolutely essential in many ways to the success of the quest. And Tolkien took all of that into account. And as a result, the Lord of the Rings trilogy actually feels very natural in its progression. So again, just kind of glazing Tolkien right here with all these praises, but it's well-deserved praise. There's not many other stories out there where if you think about how the plot rolls forward and how the choices of these characters matter in the long run, it really is hard to find stories with the same reach as the Lord of the Rings, with the same amount of depth that do the same that hit those same notes and show why these characters' choices matter. There's other great stories out there where character choice is absolutely essential to what happens, and I'm not trying to tear those down at all. But that when it comes to epic fantasy, many times the writers are more concerned with the epicness of the plot, and that's the plot that must roll forward But Tolkien understood that it was the characters who pushed the plot along. And that's captured beautifully in all of the character arcs of the 9 members of the Fellowship, plus so many other characters along the way. Looking at Faramir, at Denethor, at Eomer and King Theoden, Eowyn being one of the biggest ones. All of these characters, and Gollum, all these other characters who are supporters to the overall story and to the Fellowship, all of them make choices that matter. They all play a very important role in the plot. They're not just there to serve the plot and to serve the main characters. They are there to complement the other main characters and to help move the plot forward. That is good writing. And in all honesty, that is a level of writing that takes time and practice to achieve, which comes back to what I was saying in the first stream that got taken down, that in order to create a great success like the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers and the Return of the King, you must have that combination of passion and perseverance that keeps you coming at your story again and again and again and again and again to make it the best that you can, and that you want to be the best because you feel that passion. You know that the story can be the absolute best if you just give it what it needs. So again, I'll put that equation right here. Passion plus perseverance equals success. And make sure I spell perseverance correctly. All right, let me catch up with some things you guys have said. Her personality, so meaning to Susie, her personality wouldn't allow her to be possessed by the Thorn Ring. Absolutely. Because Susie's just very different than Noelle. Kids like Chris and Noelle are more susceptible to the Thorn Ring, given that they're more alike than they'd ever admit. And she's kind of using Susie as a substitute for Des, more of a substitute for both Chris and Des. And I would agree with that when it comes to Deltarune, that Noelle truly and deeply misses and loves her sister and is looking for a substitute for her sister in Susie and Chris. So, and yeah, if you were to give the Thorn Ring to Susie, Susie would take it off eventually. I think she would accept it if Chris gave it to her, but she would eventually take it off when she began to realize what it's doing to her. Now, if you were to present Susie with the One Ring, now there's an interesting scenario, because again, Susie wishes to be a hero, to save everyone, and a lot of her motives are very selfless. However, the One Ring does prey on that. For instance, Faramir. Let me see if I can actually find that exact quote from Faramir, because it's a pretty good one. Now, we might say that Susie could be like Faramir, and I think that Susie kind of would be a bit like Faramir in terms of how she would initially reject the One Ring. But if the One Ring is left around long enough, it does begin to have an effect on the person who's there. Faramir is able to resist the One Ring because of his goodness of mind and of soul. But if Faramir had been on the quest for the long haul, he was originally supposed to go to Rivendell. That's what a dream of his told him he should do. If he had initially done that, the One Ring would have also begun to corrupt him as well. So let's see here in the Forbidden Pool. Let's see here. Let's have Journey. Nope. Come on, let's see here. Is it the Window of the West, or is it in... Okay. Here we are. So, Faramir. So it seems, Faramir said slowly, very softly, with a strange smile. So that is the answer to all the riddles. The One Ring that was thought to have perished from the world. And Boromir tried to take it by force, and you escaped and ran all the way to me. And here in the wild I have you, two halflings, and a host of men at my call, and the ring of power, a pretty stroke of fortune, a chance for Faramir, captain of Gondor, to show his quality. Ha! He stood up, very tall and stern, his gray eyes glinting. Frodo and Sam sprang from their stools and set themselves side by side with their backs to the wall, fumbling for their sword hilts. There was a silence. All the men in the cave stopped talking, looked towards them in wonder. But Faramir sat down again in his chair and began to laugh quietly, and suddenly became grave again. Alas for Boromir, it was too sore a trial, he said. How you have increased my sorrow, you two strange wanderers from a far country, bearing the peril of men. But you are less judges of men than I of halflings. We are truth speakers, we men of Gondor. We boast seldom, and then perform or die in the attempt. Not if I found it on the highway would I take it, I said. Even if I were such a man as to desire this thing, and even though I knew not clearly what this thing was when I spoke, still I should take those words as a vow, and be held by them. But I am not such a man. Or I am wise enough to know that there are some perils from which a man must flee. Sit at peace and be at comfort, Samwise. If you seem to have stumbled, think that it was fated to be so. Your heart is shrewd as well as faithful, and saw clearer than your eyes. For strange though it may seem, it was safe to declare this to me. It may even help the master that you love. It shall turn to his good. It is my power. So be comforted. But do not even name this thing again aloud. Once is enough. So, right there, Faramir accepts in the moment where in the movie when it's revealed that Frodo's got the one ring and he's like, I will take you to my father, because Peter Jackson really wanted to play up on the negative relationship between Faramir and Denethor, which is present in the book but in a different flavor. Here in the book, Faramir's like, nope, I'm not gonna take it. I said I wouldn't, and I'm gonna take that as a vow. But also he recognizes I should not have this thing around me because it will corrupt me. If it corrupted my brother, whom I love so dearly, it would even corrupt me. So Faramir's like, yeah, I'm gonna help you out and get this ring away from me as fast as I possibly can, because yikes. I says, would it be efficient to go through your story after the first draft and to question every single decision, action, death, and dialogue option? How does this affect the plot? Does it do what is needed? I would say yes. Now then, in that process, you don't need to go about and be all like, okay, I must think out every single thing and its long-reaching consequences. Some choices are meant to have short-term consequences to set up what comes next. But so long as they're setting up what comes next, it works. And so that is important to ask yourself. For instance, so I will some of my own stories. The Legend of the Ten Lords, my leading trilogy, not my leading trilogy. Right now is a trilogy. It's going to be a whole complete saga of 6 books when I'm done with it. And I'm hoping to release the 4th book in March of this year. That's my hope. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But sorry, excuse me. In that series of books, because I knew that I was going to be writing a whole lot. Like I said, this happens to a lot of writers. You're like, sweet, I'm writing a big series. I've got tons of room and tons of time to do all the stuff that I want to do. So I'm going to do all of that stuff. Yay. And then your story just continues to get larger and larger and larger. And even though you might enjoy all the stuff you're putting in there, it might not necessarily be what is needed to move everything along. You can even look at it, again, a series as great as the Stormlight Archive is. The Stormlight Archive has got lots of things that, honestly, you don't really need it. You could have dropped it and moved on to the next thing. It's cool to have it in there because it gives more depth to the characters and to the world, but it isn't necessary for many character arcs or even for the plots. And that's a pitfall of many, many large stories. And so that's something to kind of bear in mind. I absolutely grew pedantic with some of my books and just wanted to say all these things I wanted to say because I liked it and it was on my mind and I wanted it and I thought about it and wouldn't it be great to share it with other people? When I then wrote Bleed, Steam, and Steel, I took a much different approach. My approach for that series was to instead treat every main POV as a novella. And originally, the first two of the perspectives I'd already written, which was for Asuka and for Zemon, were just novellas. And then when they were all combined together, I then used that as well for General Wesley Arthur and then for Lagertha. Make their perspectives the size of novellas, 40,000 words. And so as a result, I could then cut out all the extra fluff. I had to because I had 40,000 words to work with, no more than that. So in 40,000 words, I had to make sense of all of everything these characters did. And so to come around to those questions, yes, I'd ask myself, does this affect the plot? Does it affect the characters going forward? Does it do what I need it to do? And if I was seeking to justify anything, if the answer was no, then I'd say I have to cut it. As much as I like it, I can't put it in there. So that and so that is that I mean as hard as that is, and that means a lot of work on your part, those are the right kinds of questions to ask yourself once you begin the editing process. Is this important? Is this critical for the story moving forward? Is this critical for my characters moving forward? If the answer is no, you either need to rewrite it so it does work, or you need to cut it. Sure enough, for much larger stories, you can justify, hey, look, this is just adding depth and breadth. But just acknowledge, though, that might come at the risk of losing the interest of the reader. That's always the risk with larger books, that you might lose their interest as the story goes on. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind there. Also, since I've got the footage from Frieren Beyond Journey's End going on, the newest episode comes out tomorrow. I'm so excited for it. And in terms of people like thinking about the Lord of the Rings, like one of the big quests has been, who is the successor to Tolkien? George R. Martin so desperately wants to be the successor to Tolkien, and he's failed. I'm sorry, George R. Martin has failed. Why has he failed? Because his books are nowhere on the same level as Tolkien's, and he will never finish them. So that's why Martin fails. He is not the true successor to Tolkien. And especially his style is actually very antithetical to Tolkien's as well. His insights, his worldview, his characters. He is trying to deconstruct Lord of the Rings. And the interesting thing is that in the process of trying to do his own deconstruction, he has fallen for the pitfall of so many grimdark fantasies, which is, if there's no hope, then you actually lose the meaning of fantasy. Fantasy must have room for hope, because in a realistic world, it seems like hope and faith are never rewarded. But in fantasy, they are. Grimdark tries to flip that on its head. But the thing is that grimdark, as fun as it can be, unless it takes a good turn at the end, will cause itself to collapse because it is antithetical to its own roots. This is one of the reasons why I'm very curious to see how Berserk turns out in the long run, because Berserk, despite being a grimdark story, a grimdark fantasy, before Kentaro Miura died, he had said that he wanted to give it a happy ending because he felt that the characters would absolutely deserve it. And in a way, by giving even a grimdark fantasy a good happy ending for the characters, at least as far as they can be allowed to have it, depending on what the plot is, you actually then fulfill the promise of fantasy. And that's something that Martin has not understood. Now then, when I look at something like Frieren Beyond Journey's End, Frieren is not on the same level as Tolkien's work. It isn't. As great as it is. But in terms of being a successor to Tolkien's works. If you haven't yet watched or read Frieren Beyond Journey's End, I would highly recommend it because you get so much. You get you get all these different characters across all these different timelines. They are rich, they are deep, they are engaging, they're meaningful, they're interconnected. The themes of time, of love, of friendship, of meaning, of adventure, of honor, all of this are things that are addressed through the actions of these characters. And you guys see how the actions of these characters have short reaching and long reaching consequences that change them and change the people around them and slowly evolve the world as well. And through a character like Frieren, you're able to see so much more of that. In The Lord of the Rings, you are normally seeing everything through the eyes of mortal characters, except for the first age. In the first age, most stories are told through the eyes of the elves, with some stories being told through the eyes of the humans, but a lot of it is from the elves' point of view and from the elves' understanding, which is very different from how we get to see characters and the world through their eyes in The Hobbit and in The Lord of the Rings, where they are mortal. They don't get to see the big picture. They haven't seen all these other people. Haven't gotten to see how these consequences have long-reaching effects, which is then why it's so important to have characters like Gandalf and Elrond in the series and Galadriel, because they can provide that much needed perspective to the mortals, the dwarves, humans, and hobbits who are helping to make these great choices, to go on these great quests, which will hopefully save the world. And Frieren taps into that same feel. So if you're looking for something that's going to give you very similar vibes and feels to Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, don't go looking for it in something like Game of Thrones, which is a deconstruction of The Lord of the Rings. I would say go and check out Frieren Beyond Journey's End, because even though it's a very different story from anything that Tolkien ever wrote, it has similar feels, themes, approaches, and it's just beautifully done. So I'm so looking forward to the second season. And you know what? Maybe like maybe 10 years from now, because let's see here. Because I've said in 10 years I would come back to Star Wars's The Acolyte to see if The Acolyte stands the test of time, because I shredded it in the moment, but maybe time will be kind to it. Who knows? So now 8 years from now, because I said that about 2 years ago, 8 years from now, I'll have to check out The Acolyte and see if it stands the test of time. I think it'd be very interesting to come back in 10 years and see if Frieren has passed the test of time, and if it still manages to capture similar qualities to like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Because if so, there's a very good chance that it will be remembered and passed along long enough that it will obtain that mythic status as the Lord of the Rings has, and become one of those stories that inspires future generations, not just right now in 2026, but in 2036, 2046, 2056. And yes, I do believe that the Earth will live long enough to see that happen. I know that there's lots of stuff going on right now, but you know what? Humanity is beautifully resilient, and good wins out quite often. So don't lose any hope. It's one of the things that escapism tells us. Again, what fantasy promises us, that there is a good ending. That such that good qualities are rewarded. John Wells is here. Woohoo! I'm watching the Two Towers now. Awesome. Two Towers is so good. I love the Battle of Helm's Deep. I actually like the Battle of Minas Tirith even more, but that's just me. And I promise it's coming. I know I'm more than a year late on this, but I will have a video doing a deep dive analysis and contrast between the Siege of Eregion and the Battle of Helm's Deep. The big crowning battle at the end of Rings of Power Season 2 is a great example of how, even if you follow a formula, you can still write a terrible story. Because, contrary to what most other analysis and critics have said on the internet, the Siege of Eregion, conceptually and mechanically, is actually a really good fight. However, in practice, it is awful. It is abysmal. It is an insult. And it's because J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, they had the formula, but they put all the wrong things in. So if you're all like, hey, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, I mean, still, that's some math. There's some crunching going on there, but it's simplistic enough. But if rather than putting in A, you put in F, and rather than B, you put in Z, and then rather than getting C squared, they're looking for epsilon squared, and you're like, wait, what? What? Does that even work? I mean, technically it should, and yet for whatever reason, it's just feels like it's falling apart. And that's the thing. That's one of the things that I want to do with that particular video is explain why a battle that formulaically should work absolutely falls apart. Fire Fun Times wrote, somehow the Amazing Digital Circus has always sort of had a biblical underlining, not in terms of anything specific. There's just certain things and certain images that are very biblical, just like the vibe of it. And I would agree with you, Fire Fun Time, that there are definitely, and not just the whole Cain and Abel, but there are certain things about the Amazing Digital Circus that if you understand Christianity, you can definitely see certain themes play out there in the story. Even though I would argue that Gooseworks probably wasn't thinking that, that's just one of the fun things with storytelling. It's a happy coincidence of any good writer that if you put your effort into telling a great story, your audience will find reasons to resonate with it, and they are going to take from their own experiences and from their own knowledge, find those similarities, make those connections, and it enriches their experience with your story. But you do not get that connection unless you did your job right to tell a good story in the beginning. John says, I'm waiting for the announcement of The Lord of the Rings, The Scouring of the Shire, directed by Sean Astin. That would be something. That would be something. I would love to see, like you could do an entire movie of a blow by blow of the Scouring of the Shire. It would be amazing. Sad thing is that now a lot. Well, I mean, Elijah Wood still looks as young as ever, but Sean Astin and Dominic Moynihan and who's the other Hobbit actor? They are all definitely showing their age now. Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, and Sean Astin. They are definitely not as young as they used to be. It has been a quarter of a century. Actually, it's been more than a quarter of a century since they acted in those movies. So you would have to do a lot of makeup and CGI to make them look young again. And I think we would prefer some authenticity. But a Scouring of the Shire movie, sign me up. It would be amazing if you did a blow-by-blow directly from the book onto the big screen. I would love to see it. I would absolutely love to see it. They would have to make some major de-age tech. LOL. Oh, yeah, they would need some major de-aging tech. And not just the pretty little dots on people's faces. And actually, let me address, since this is a stream about the Lord of the Rings, let me, and in case you were wondering, yes, it is. See, look, Lord of the Rings right there. It's amazing. Oh, now I got to step away from it before Warner Brothers strikes us down again. Hold on a second here. Allow me to collect my thoughts as I read. So as a Christian myself, I love biblical references and stories, and I love spotting the more obscure references that most people don't see, and that is a whole lot of fun. I, as a practicing Christian myself, I enjoy being able to put some of my beliefs into my own stories. One of the things, though, that I've tried to avoid is becoming preachy. And it's really hard to do once you begin injecting your own thoughts and philosophies blatantly into your story. And like I want to I want people to be like ISO, be able to be like, oh look, I recognize that, I recognize that theme because it's something I believe in, and not be all like, oh my gosh, here Lars is taking a sledgehammer to my face and like, Jesus. I don't want to be that kind of writer. That's the kind of stuff that turns off most people. And again, Tolkien, very, very ardent Catholic. And those beliefs are clearly in his stories. However, he made sure to weave them in through the choices that his characters made, rather than getting onto a pedestal and being all like, and thus the Lord did say. I mean, there's definitely people who want those kinds of books, and there's a market for it. And if you want to write those kinds of books, go on ahead. But those kinds of stories, again, do best when they're not trying to be overly preachy, but rather take people's beliefs and put them into action. And that goes really for any story that has any sort of religious motivation behind it, whether it be Christian, Jewish, Islamic, Hindi, Zoroastrianism, whatever you want to throw on out there. It's best to see characters put their beliefs into practice and make those beliefs just a lived part of that world. That actually communicates thoughts and belief, in my opinion, way better to the audience. There's something about Christianity that can be easily horrifying, psychologically, existentially, just normally. Yeah, you're right about that. Right about that, ISO. Okay, so coming back to, I was going to say, with the scouring of the Shire, what's what I think a lot of people fail to realize when it comes to the Scouring of the Shire, why Tolkien wrote it the way that he did, was that Tolkien was Tolkien through his story was coming to terms with his experiences after the First World War. Now, please excuse me if I suddenly get emotional in talking about this, because it's something that in many ways I can actually very much empathize and sympathize with, even though I myself was not a veteran of World War I, nor have I served in the military. I actually am exempted from military service because my feet are reconstructed. Because my feet are reconstructed, I would not be drafted into any military unless they were absolutely dying for manpower. So, that aside, it's something that I definitely empathize with because of the changes that Tolkien went through. Going to war, coming back home, the world having changed so much, and he himself not knowing where he really fits in a world after the war, and how people perceived the things that he lived through in a way that did not match his experiences. And having lost two of his best friends in combat. There are 4 hobbits who go to war and come back home. For Tolkien, it was him and 3 friends who went to war, and 2 of them never came home. They died in France, fighting against the Germans. So for Tolkien to write the experiences of Frodo, Sam, and Merry and Pippin coming back from the quest for the ring and coming back to the Shire and then having to cleanse it, in many ways, it's almost like fan fiction of what Tolkien would have wanted in real life, to come home with his 3 best friends and together embrace what the world had for them and to overcome it together. When the hobbits return home, Sauron has corrupted and destroyed much of the Shire. And so the Shire must be purged of the enemies that have taken it over. And it must be purged of Sauron's corruption and of his pollution. It must be purified, which happens. It happens in the story. And Tolkien for himself would have loved to have seen that the men who returned home from the war would have been able to come back home and remove the filth and the corruption and the backwards changes that were happening to England, that the countryside could be reclaimed and be made beautiful again, that everyone would have a chance to find their own happy ending. The Scouring of the Shire is there for Tolkien and for his fellow veterans to have that final hoorah of getting the homecoming that they deserved and making a world that is better. Because that's what the hobbits do. And in Tolkien's story, everyone gets to come home, unlike what actually happened in his real life. So for Tolkien, the Scouring of the Shire is incredibly personal and so very important for what it means to come home, what it means to have been a veteran of something like the Great War. And yet, what's one of the things that's beautiful about the end of the Scouring of the Shire is that Tolkien also acknowledges that you can't just simply have your fairy tale ending and call it good and say that you're done. Because Tolkien himself lived with the after effects of that war, like everyone else who fought in it. And for Frodo, who suffered the evils of the One Ring and who went through so much, there is no coming home. He's literally there. And he says he saved the Shire, but not for himself, because he can't live there anymore, not after everything he's gone through. He can no longer be the hobbit who can enjoy peace in the Shire. His wounds go too deep. So the only rest then for him is in heaven. And this isn't Tolkien advocating for people to off themselves, not at all. But that for those people who can't find peace when coming home, Tolkien is basically acknowledging, I understand where you are and where you're coming from. And saying, I believe that there is a better place where one day you won't have to suffer through that anymore. And that is, again, the hope that fantasy brings. And it's an element of his stories that I wish more people address and talk about, because the Scouring of the Shire is always blamed as being anticlimactic, but it is not anticlimactic so much as it is Tolkien trying to make sense of his lived experience through his stories. So whenever I hear like certain people, like I used to listen to a lot of different YouTubers, so I no longer follow because they've just grown insufferable and way too political over time. And I'm just like, guys, I once really respected your opinions, but there was one opinion that I never respected from them, even after listening to them for years, and it was that authors should never try to work out their own individual problems in their stories. They're like, don't do that. I'm not here to read your therapy session. I'm reading your story. I'm watching your story for the escapism. Don't you dare try to shove your personal problems onto me. For all those people who say that, I'd be like, yeah, I know that you guys love, or you purport to love, the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Are you going to tell Tolkien that he should not have worked through his personal demons and experiences through the Lord of the Rings? Are you going to tell him that he should not have incorporated the blasting fires at Helm's Deep in the Battle of Minas Tirith, or trench warfare in Minas Tirith, or Frodo's feelings at the end of Coming Home, or the Scouring of the Shire? Because if so, if that's what you're going to tell him, that would mean that you are degrading the stories that you say are perfect. So I'm sorry, but authors are allowed to play out what has happened to them and make sense of their own lived experiences in their work. I think that no author should make that process preachy. That's my personal opinion. But I support every author who needs to work out their personal whatever through their art. I myself have done that. If anyone is paying very close attention when reading The Legend of the Ten Lords, they should realize that a lot of these books are actually me dealing with depression and what that actually means, at least what that means to me and how it manifests itself in my life, as well as coming to terms with things that happened in high school that still affect me to this day, that I've tried and I really have made wonderful strides in outgrowing those things that happened. And I'm no longer held captive by them. But if you're paying attention to what's happening in the Legend of the Ten Lords, you will recognize those things. And I feel like that's absolutely fine. If that takes away from your reading experience, I'm sorry. Go read One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. You won't be working through any personal problems reading those books. Let me guarantee you that. Let's see here. John says, I get it. I'm reworking my story to a horror noir, sort of The Omen and The Exorcist meets Dirty Harry and Die Hard. It's tough to balance the storytelling with the preaching. Oh my gosh, John, I want to read that. That sounds so cool. I want to read it. I never drew the parallel that Sauron was an interpretation of Hitler. Now then, to that, I know that Tolkien said that he did not write The Lord of the Rings to be a critique on Nazi Germany. However, if the boot fits, then the boot fits. And it works really, really well for Sauron. John says that's exactly what art is. It's an expression of the writer. It's up to the audience if they agree or not, but a story is a form of art, and art is expression and how someone views the world. Amen, John. You said it, and you said it way better than I have. And with all my pedantic ranting, you said it in the exact short sentence that it needed to be said. So yeah. And again, it's one of the reasons why I just love The Lord of the Rings, because you can tell how personal it was to Tolkien once you get to start learning about who he was as a man. You can see his life and his lived experiences portrayed and played out through his characters in The Lord of the Rings. You can see his Catholic beliefs also played out through some of the things that happen. At the same time, he delivers this beautiful, different fantasy that if you don't care about any of that stuff, it's okay, because it's a great standalone story on its own that takes you away to Middle-earth on this grand quest to destroy this evil ring alongside 9 compelling, interesting, heroic characters who all have their own fantastic journeys. And the movies, even if the movies are not a perfect one-for-one retelling and interpretation of what Tolkien himself wrote, the movies done by Peter Jackson are just fantastic. They're so good. That was offensive, Lars. You don't understand the complexity of one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. Okay, ISO, I have a professor who would absolutely agree with your jokey comment right there. I know I've shared this story before, but I'll share it again. In my undergrad program at the University of Arizona, I took a class on medieval Italian literature. Leading into the early modern period. So I got to read the Decameron, the Vita Nuova, and Dante's Inferno. I did not read all of the Divine Comedy, just Dante's Inferno, along with several other stories. And halfway through the semester, my professor was like, "Okay, guys, who do you think is the greatest poet of all time?" And of course, all the English majors are throwing out poets you've never heard of before. People who were hoping to score brownie points with the professor, like Dante Alighieri is the best poet of all time. And my professor was like, "You're all wrong. Dr. Seuss is the greatest poet of all time." And like jaws dropped and people started laughing. They're like, "Dr. Seuss? Are you kidding me?" He's like, "Oh, I'm not." He's like, when your 3-4-year-old daughter tells you that she wants you to read One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish for the 500th time to her, you begin to see the beauties and the complexity and the deeper meaning of Dr. Seuss's words. His words get stuck in your brain and you can never get them out. I have been haunted by One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, Thing 1 and Thing 2 for years. And it was played off as a joke, But if you want an earworm of poetry, Dr. Seuss has got you covered. And I just gotta say this: Dr. Seuss's "How the Grinch Stole Christmas," it's, in my opinion, stands right up there with the Peanuts Christmas special. The Peanuts Christmas special is probably one of the most bold Christmas stories ever told, alongside Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. But Dr. Seuss's "How the Grinch Stole Christmas," it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not, if you celebrate Christmas or not, the message at the end of that story hits so dang hard like a freight train that you can't help but just be all like, I feel enlightened. I feel like I have had an experience that has made me a better human being. And that's Dr. Seuss right there, y'all. Also, funny enough, coming back to Tolkien, Tolkien also wrote a whole lot of fantastic poetry, which I know I've covered in other videos before. I actually have a whole video about Tolkien's poetry. But let me come along to one of the best poems that Tolkien did. I need to actually bring out both the Fellowship of the Ring and the Return of the King to make my point of this here. Let me see here. I gotta go past the Black Gate opens, past the Field of Cormallen, the Steward and the King, not the Scouring of the Shire, many partings. Here we are. Okay. So, and maybe I should try singing this. So, Bilbo's poem about the road. The road goes ever on and on, down. I'm not going to sing it because my throat's way too scratchy right now. Coughing and talking for too long. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet, until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say. When put into perspective right here, this is what Bilbo sings as he's about to set off for the last time on his final adventure. So, after finally ridding himself of the ring, when Gandalf was like, "Bilbo, the ring is still in your pocket," and Bilbo in the book puts the ring into an envelope and puts it up onto the mantle of the fireplace. In the movie, he just drops it there at the door. Either way, it works. He says, "Well, let's start then." He stepped out the front door. It was a fine night, and the black sky was dotted with stars. He looked up, sniffing the air. What fun! What fun to be off again! Off on the road with dwarves. This is what I've really been longing for years. Goodbye, he said, looking up at his old home and bowing to the door. Goodbye, Gandalf. Goodbye, for the present, Bilbo. Take care of yourself. You are old enough and perhaps wise enough. Take care. I don't care. Don't you worry about me. I'm happy now as I've ever been, and that is saying a great deal. But the time has come. I am being swept off my feet at last, he added, and then in a low voice, as if to himself, he sang softly in the dark. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say. He paused, silent for a moment. Then without another word he turned away from the lights and voices in the fields and tents, and followed by his three companions, went around into his garden, and trotted down the long sloping path. He jumped over a low place in the hedge at the bottom, and took to the meadows, passing into the night like a rustle of wind in the grass. Gandalf remained for a while standing after him in the darkness. Goodbye, my dear Bilbo, until our next meeting, he said softly, and went back indoors. This is a beautiful beginning to a very central poem, which captures but Bilbo's ultimate theme within within the Lord of the Rings trilogy, that everyone has a journey to go on. Everyone else has a part to play in that journey. And people come and go as they need to. Bilbo's big journey was already had in The Hobbit. And now he's going off on one last journey to see the Lonely Mountain one more time, to see his friends one last time, and then to go to Rivendell and retire and eventually pass away. That is his plan, and that's what he sets out to do. This song is his farewell, realizing that his story is over in the grand scheme of things, but that his journey is still going on. Who knows where it's going to lead, but that's okay. And in the same way for many of us, whether our stories are beginning or ending or in the middle of it, we're all on a road going somewhere. And whether where we cannot say, but it's a road that we all must take. Now, that is now that's the end of Bilbo's introduction. The beginning of Bilbo's conclusion in the entire trilogy, when Frodo finally makes his way back to Rivendell, has the chance to see his uncle. And this sets up when Frodo and Bilbo will both leave Middle Earth together. Frodo and Bilbo are spending time together in Rivendell. And Bilbo is giving gifts to the hobbits because, again, he knows he's old. He's going to die, or so he thinks. So he's giving away gifts and everything. He's given some treasure to Sam for his wedding, and he's given pipes to Merry and Pippin to smoke. And he asks that they remember him as they smoke them. And he says, "Now where were we? Yes, of course, giving presents. Which reminds me, what became of my ring, Frodo, that you took away?" "I've lost it, Bilbo dear," Frodo said. "I got rid of it, you know." "Oh, what a pity," said Bilbo. "I should have liked to see it again. But no, how silly of me. That's what you went for, wasn't it? To get rid of it? But it's all so confusing. For such a lot of other things seem to have gotten mixed up with it. Aragorn's affairs, and the White Council, and Gondor, and horsemen, the Southrons, and Oliphaunts. Did you really see one, Sam? And caves, and towers, and golden trees, and goodness knows what besides. I evidently came back much too straight a road from my trip. I think Gandalf might have shown me around a bit, but then the auction would have been over before I got back, and I should have been in even more trouble. Anyway, it's too late now. And really, I think it's much more comfortable to sit here and hear all about it. The fire's very cozy here, and the food's very good. And there are elves when you want them. What more could you want?" The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road is gone. Let others follow it who can. Let them a journey new begin. But I at last with weary feet will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to meet. As Bilbo murmured the last words, his head drooped on his chest, and he slept soundly. So, that's the end of Bilbo's journey. It's a beautiful bit of poetry once you understand what that means. As again, everyone has their own story to tell, their own road to follow, their own path to go down. Those journeys come and go, and and that's just again that's kind of the way it is. And eventually, our own stories must end, and someone else takes up the way. Are you all right, Lars? Oh, I'm sorry. I am coughing. But like I said earlier, I apologize if I grow emotional. Say the Lord of the Rings story to me is a very special one. In part because it actually inspired me not just become a writer, because it did. Tolkien absolutely inspired me to pursue becoming a writer, even though for years I said I couldn't write and that I would never write. But also, The Lord of the Rings was a real comfort to me when I had my feet reconstructed in middle school. For basically a year and a half, I was cut off from most of my classmates because I was recovering, or because I had to have a special schedule to accommodate how I was on crutches or in a wheelchair. And it was lonely. It was hard. And The Lord of the Rings was something I got into that gave me a lot of comfort at the time. It was my first real nerdy pleasure. And interestingly enough, I remember at a point in middle like, for transitioning from middle school to high school, where I remember that I thought to myself, I can remake myself. I can be whoever I want to be in this moment. If I want to be, I can pursue to become a jock. I can try to be popular. Imagine that, me being popular. Oh man, that'd be cool. But then I also thought, or I could be a nerd. I could actually be a nerd and I could unabashedly love what I love. What do I want? And I chose, I would try to be both. I was not going to be ashamed of being a nerd, and I never have been. And I've never been ashamed of loving The Lord of the Rings and just whatever other nerdy thing that I love. That was a choice that I made, and I've stuck by it now for 2 decades. And as a result, that story means a whole lot to me because that was the story that I loved in that particular time. And and so I made The Lord of the Rings maybe too much of my life at that time as a teenager. I definitely got a lot of flack for being so all consumed by The Lord of the Rings, but I still really deeply enjoyed it. And as I've come to learn more about Tolkien and his work and more about The Lord of the Rings, and as I myself have gained so many experiences, as I've learned to be a creator and an author, when I now read Bilbo's poetry, or really it's Tolkien's poetry, but I read it through Bilbo, it's an emotional experience because it resonates with me because I know what it's like to go on great adventures. I know what it's like to lose a lot too. I know what it's like to feel crushed by the depression of something that like the ring can bring. I know what it feels like to be scarred by past experiences and to feel like there's no going back home. And in many cases, there really isn't, at least not to the home that you once envisioned. And yet, just like the Lord of the Rings promises hope and healing, I have felt that hope and healing in my life. And and all of those things are things that have inspired again my own writing that I've then explored through not just my own experiences, but then through the experiences through the experiences that I've taken my characters on. And so as a result, like when I see then what Tolkien wrote and what he did, I just can't help but feel that awe and that emotional connection. And so it makes me again emotional to read that stuff. And I find that to be, again, an excellent quality in a story. There are other stories that can bring out the emotions in me, that can start up the waterworks. Mistborn is definitely a trilogy that can do that. When I get to the end of the Hero of Ages, it's just so beautiful. Like if you don't feel emotional when you're reading the conclusion to the Hero of Ages, then I'm like, ah, did you really pay attention to what you just read? It's so good. And The Lord of the Rings is exactly like that as well. The Lord of the Rings is one of the few stories that can get me to cry. And not because I like, it's so good because it makes me emotional. But I think it's good to say that because it means that the story has real worth and meaning beyond just simple entertainment, but that it has that it can create those emotional connections that we all need. And it's not a bad thing to feel emotional over a good story. I think that's actually really healthy. And again, is a good sign that the author's work reached you, and hopefully in a very positive way too. John says, I remember when I was a kid, my friends and I used to write our continuations of The Lord of the Rings, which was basically bad fan fiction from 10-year olds. but the story is over and it's perfect. Oh, it absolutely is. I love it. I'm so glad it ended where it did. And I think Tolkien's also was also right not to continue on with the story as he originally had planned. And Isol says, I was forced to write poetry in elementary school. All I remember is that I was proud of it, but I hated writing it. There is an epic poem that I wrote for college that I wish I still had that I still had somewhere, because trying to recreate it from memory would almost be a disservice to the poem. But it was this really it was this epic poem that had a really hilarious ending to it, because you've got this knight who bids farewell to the princess, princess that she gives him her token of affection, and that he's her champion, and he goes on out to fight the dragon. And then when he gets there, right before, like right at the mouth of the dragon's cave, the dragon comes out with an AK-47 and shoots him. And I wrote it all in German, and I made it rhyme in German. And I was very I was very proud of how that ending went, because it was something along the lines of der Ritter war bereit für den Sieg, für den Sieg, und draußen kam der Drachen und er schoss ihn mit seinem AK-47. And I remember when I shared that in class, like a lot of kids, like a lot of the other college kids were like, what the heck is this? My professor almost died laughing. He thought it was so funny. And that's the reason why I don't have that poem anymore, is because that professor loved that poem so much he refused to give it back. So he never returned the work. He just told me I got an A on the project. And I'm like, oh, okay. But like, I wanted that poem back. TV God says, I think for Tolkien, what was all his and very unique, I bet that's what makes it special. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Everything that Tolkien put into his stories, just his own personal experiences, the way that he wrote, again, his economy of words is just amazing. And just the way that he told such a fantastic heroic tale with with believable, engaging characters, in a world that is just so deep and just flows so well, from moment to moment, because of what the characters do. Their consequences have real meaning. All of that just made for just such a great reading experience. Really and truly, The Lord of the Rings, as a trilogy, is just, it is a masterpiece. And the reason why it is the defining story within fantasy is because it was the first of its kind. Tolkien not only was it the first of its kind, but Tolkien did it so well. And yeah, just so it's just so good. And here I am, 2 hours later, and also plus all the stuff from the previous stream that got taken down by Warner Brothers. Yeah, uh, like there's just still so much more that can be said. I've gone on for nearly as long now as the theatrical release of the Fellowship of the Ring, and there's just still so much more that can be said about it. I've really only been scratching the surface. Yeah, maybe that's what people are missing. Yeah, people just need to. If people really want to appreciate Tolkien, they just got to dive a little bit deeper into it. John says, I love how they spent all villains are more concept than actual physical characters. The evil of corruption that you can't see. Yeah. And it's one of the great things about the ring. The ring is not just an item, but it's also a character within the story, and a very corrupting character, which again, for the video that I hope to release tomorrow, I actually do have a thing in there about how like the One Ring is actually more destructive to an adventuring party than a white mage from your typical isekai manga. I've got a good joke in there. But man, I think, well, let's hear. No, I do not want, I should not end it here just yet, because One of the things I had said at the beginning of the previous stream, now I got way more people here, and I need to get this on out before we even think of closing, before even closing out for the evening, is this. So usually these live streams are actually meant to be a way in which I can conduct a teaching lesson. And I really, really enjoy doing these kinds of lessons. However, one of the things I've learned is that it's a poor substitute for a real classroom experience. Now, there's really no way that I can facilitate a true classroom experience with the setup that I have. It's always way better to have people in person and speaking, contributing, and so forth. What I really want to do for a future video, and actually for a series of videos if possible, is I want Camille's Harem to be able to deliver teaching lessons for writing that can be utilized by you guys as a resource that you can come back to time and time again if you need it. And so I want to actually have like a real like writing lesson video, not just an analysis and a breakdown with then some writing advice at the end, but do an actual writing advice video that dives into a topic that you would want to learn more about and provides you then with some actionable insight and some challenges along the way that you can use. So I'd like to hear from you guys here in the chat. What is a topic in writing, like a writing question, a writing problem, that you would like to have a writing lesson on? That we then, as Camille's Harem, will actually then craft this as a resource that you can then use to come back to time and time again should you need it. So please give me your suggestions in the chat. It can be stuff like, hey, I need help with punctuation. Like something like that. So like please give me your suggestions for what you need, so that way we can start working on this, because I think that would be really great as a channel for novice authors by novice authors, that if we could start showing how if we could start making these kinds of videos that again could act as resources, I feel like that would help us to actually live up to our potential and really provide some help for writers everywhere. John says, making subplots count and not feel random. Okay, that's absolutely a really good question right there. Comcraft, hello, what have I missed? Comcraft, you missed one stream getting taken down and over 2 hours of me gushing about Lord of the Rings, some discussion about Deltarune and what would happen if you gave the ring to any character, and if how Susie would react if she got the Thorn Ring. My recommendation for Frieren, especially with season 2 coming out tomorrow. So yeah, and me also growing emotional while reading Bilbo's poem, "The Road Goes Ever On." How about a video on turning an idea into a story? Okay. So how do you make your scenes flow when they begin to drag? How to follow through with a scene to its conclusion and following into the next. Okay, that's also really, really good, and I think really helpful for for anyone who like me, like this is something that I run into all the time. When has a scene gone on for way too long? And how do you gracefully transition from one to the other? So yeah, that's actually an excellent idea. So we have, how about a video on turning an idea into a story, making subplots count and not feel random, and how to make your scenes flow when they begin to drag, and how to follow through with the scene to its conclusion and following into the next. Is your throat all right? Unfortunately, my throat's still getting torn up by the eternal cough that I have. It will probably be this annoying way until sometime in February. Just whenever I get these kinds of coughs, they just last forever. They're such a pain. But thanks for asking, and I hope I shall overcome eventually. But I hope to make it. Um, Let's see here. Any other suggestions? Say these are very, very good, and I'm already going to make a note of them. So suggestions for writing lesson videos. Okay. Making subplots. Count when to end a scene and how to transition from one to another. How to take an idea and turn it into a story. All right, those are excellent, excellent suggestions. Anything else? Maybe it's seasonal, like my nose. Say, I definitely get, I definitely get these coughs right around the winter time. It almost always lines up with if I get sick during the winter, which I mean, the flu hits people all the time during the cold season, so it's bound to happen. It's just a question of when, and then when it happens, it just happens. It kicks it off. What about a video about organizing ideas? I noticed during brainstorming that some ideas I had work better if I used in the same story. Okay, so how to organize ideas. They all go into the same story. Excellent, excellent. Okay, that is good. And actually, I have a very like now that you bring that one up, Craft, the like I have a perfect immediate example that I know I could use for a lesson like that. And one that anyone could go and watch and see for themselves and be like, yes, yes, I see what you're saying there, Lars. Maybe that wasn't the best idea. Maybe that was a good idea, but maybe it needs to be put somewhere else. Um, Listen, Sarmel says, I want to come up with some ideas, but I'm not feeling as energetic as I used to be. So I'm sorry to hear that, Lucid Star. Like, I know what it's like when you're losing, when you've lost that energy. I'll be honest, I'll be honest, all throughout 2025, I was feeling I was feeling the dredge. I was feeling the pain. It was very, very hard to keep on going. And I mean, there's definitely some advice on how to make the most of those kinds of experiences. But unfortunately, you can't just simply pluck out of the ether all of your excitement and energy and just begin going again. But there are definitely things that you can do that help to recapture some of that energy and excitement to tell stories. So that I can we can definitely make a video on that, and hopefully have some good advice for you and for anyone else who finds themselves in a situation like that. So thank you for sharing that particular suggestion, Lucid Star, and I hope that you're able to find that kind of energy and excitement again to to play around and explore these different story ideas that you have, and to then actually make them real. To start making them not just ideas, but actual stories. And I mean, I can already how to find the energy to start telling stories again. And I will already tell you this. This is what I have found helps. Is that you share your ideas. It doesn't immediately make everything better. It doesn't. But sharing your ideas with other people, and especially doing it in person, absolutely helps to kind of whip up some energy. It's almost like a little generator or a hand cranked generator. You have to put in the effort. You got to put your neck out there. You got to talk to people, but people like to hear ideas. People like to hear stories, even if they might not exactly like your story. They like that you're willing to share your idea with them, and people will give you normally positive feedback, and that can be energizing on its own. I'll just quickly share an experience here. over the Christmas break. I'm getting myself ready, psyching myself up to tackle 2026 and all of my grandiose writing ideas and plans. And I was still feeling very much out of it from everything that had been going on in 2025 and just my lack of energy and motivation. And I was at a Christmas party at my oldest sister's place, and I was talking with this really cool guy, a Vietnam veteran, who had been invited by my brother-in-law to hang out and participate there. And so I was told him like I'm an author, and I saw that my sister had one of my books on her bookshelf there for anyone and everyone to see. So I pointed to it. I was like, I wrote that book, and it was my Puss in Boots story. And there was a bunch of really loud kids that were running everywhere, and this old guy. Not that he didn't like the kids, but he was rather nervous that one of these kids would crash into him and injure him because he's old. He was very thin. He had a hard time standing up. So, as a way of kind of distracting the kids, he was like, "Hey, did you know that this guy's an author and he wrote that book?" And so these kids stopped running and they're all like, "Wait, what? There's an author here?" And so they're like, "Ooh, ooh, can you share us the story?" And so these two little girls suddenly had questions about my story. What is it that I write? And one of them even wanted me to read the Puss in Boots story to her. So I did, and it was and even though I know once again it was kind of a way for the old man to distract the kids so they wouldn't run into him, it ended up being a really, really great positive moment for me because I got to share a story for kids with kids and get their immediate feedback, and they enjoyed it. They wanted that book. They wanted more of my stories. And I was like, "Oh, that feels good. I want to write again. I want to write stories for kids." And even though that doesn't immediately mean that, oh my gosh, now Lars is blazing away at 5,000 words a day, not even close. I've been struggling to hit my goal of 2,000 words a day, but I have felt motivated to do it. And as I've been writing, as you write, your momentum goes. And so long as you can keep up that momentum, it feeds. It feeds off of all the work that you do, and you just keep on getting better and better. So that'd be that's already some advice I can throw out there. Share your stories with other people, and you'll be surprised about the positive reception that you will get, and that is invigorating. And it's so healthy as a writer to get that positive feedback, that positive interaction, because it allows you to keep working and keep going at it. Conker says, yeah, one of the most energizing things was when my father liked the prologue of my fanfic enough that he wanted to share it with his colleague that teaches English at a college level. Comicraft, that is amazing. And you should share that with us because I'm kind of interested now because that's high praise to share to share a story that's a fan fiction with an English professor because that means it has real worth to it that people on an academic level would enjoy and even think could be useful to other students, especially those learning something like English. So that is awesome. You should definitely share it with us if you can. And Lucid Star, I hope that you do get the chance to share your story ideas with other people. Again, sharing it in person really, really helps out a lot. If you're unable to share your story ideas in person, then obviously sharing it over at our Discord is really good. Sharing them here in other positive circles, but in person just has a different kind of magic and energy about it. So I hope you get a chance to do that. So far we got 4 ideas right here. I'm going to take these to the rest of the harem to get their feedback and see how we can work on these because again, I think these are all really good suggestions and I hope that this will be really helpful to other writers out there. But so far we have when to end a scene and how to transition from one to another, how to take an idea and turn it into a story, how to organize ideas should they all go into the same story, and how to find the energy to start telling stories again. So we got four great ideas from you guys, ones that I know then will be applicable to you in your particular situation. So I'm excited to again share these with the rest of the harem, get their feedback, and we can get started on making these happen. So, Conker says, yeah, I will see if I can. I wanted to build enough of a backlog to actually post it first, though. I have another. Oh, you have another suggestion? All right, well, let's hear it. And yeah, so after this, I'm gonna have to give my throat a rest, take a little bit of a break away from the computer screen, and then get back to making that new Deltarune video. That again, I hope to be able to release tomorrow. That's my fingers crossed, fingers and toesies crossed. That I can make that happen. What about how research topics? How to research topics you are unfamiliar with? Okay. All right. Say that is a good question, especially for anyone who is writing historical fiction or who is trying to write anything that requires like a certain amount of information. Like so, for instance, when I was writing the Monarch Mercenaries Autonomy, I really wanted to dive into how magic affected real world physics, and in this particular case, astronomical physics. So, thinking about celestial bodies, planets, moons, suns, how gravity on a massive scale influences different planets. And I wanted to have what would be obviously an astronomical anomaly being two planets sharing the same moon without destroying that moon in the process. And so thanks to having been in a class where we covered some of the properties of gravity, I kind of already knew some things, but like yeah, looking into it, doing that research, you're like okay then, like well, let's put in those questions that you think that no one would ever think to ask, but you'd be surprised if you've got a question, very likely someone else has also already had that question, and if you're lucky, there's someone who has already got an answer for you, and if they don't, someone has done research adjacent to your question that will allow you to find an answer. It's all about knowing where to look and not trusting that stupid AI response that Google tries to just cram down your throat. Especially with how crazy space can be. I heard astronomers found a galaxy without dark matter, another made of almost nothing but dark matter. I haven't heard that. That's really interesting, though. But I have. Let's see here. I was just watching yesterday part of a documentary from PBS about UFOs or UAPs now, as they call them, and how physics can actually help to make sense of some of these UFO sightings. So, was it really aliens? Maybe, but there's actually a real world physics explanation that helps to make sense of it all. So, you don't just have to sound crazy and say, it was aliens. If you want to believe it was aliens, fine, but there's actually real scientific evidence that can show why it probably wasn't. And it was really neat getting into that kind of science because I was like, holy cow, you can actually explain away some really big stuff here. And it makes sense. And for others, you're like, but that doesn't make sense. Very interesting. And these scientists were very open with maybe it was extraterrestrials, but we also happen to have a real physical explanation for why it might not have been extraterrestrials. And that's a very interesting conversation. Swamp fire is crazy, and the source is so many myths and possible alien sightings. Oh yeah, like just real world gases. Actually, again, very interesting. I recently was watching another documentary that was very interesting about the real world natural gases that are now being released by the polar ice caps melting and the permafrost, for instance, in Alaska, melting, which is now causing a lot of ancient gases to be released, swamp fires and the likes. I have a new fear of AI after watching Terminator for the 100th time. Very nice. All right, everyone. So I say for this live stream and for the other one, which has gotten taken down, I have been going at this now for 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 a little over 3 hours. I'm definitely beginning to feel it in my voice. So I think we're going to wrap it on up here. I'm Omega says perhaps flipping concepts upside down. Example: ancient alien theory. Instead of being that that aliens are inspired by ancient civilizations rather than the other way around. Let me see if I get this right. Perhaps flipping concepts upside down. Example: ancient aliens theory. Instead of being that aliens are inspired by ancient civilizations rather than the other way around. Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. I mean, there is in a way kind of something to say for that, based on some interesting archaeological anomalies that exist out there. But I really enjoyed one comment. I believe it was from Minuteman, who he said it actually is a little insulting that you think that the ancients couldn't do something just because you can't. And I was like, now that's saying something because yeah, something that people still have a hard time figuring out, but it's actually true. And it sucks that the conquistadors destroyed all the evidence of this, but that Mexico City had, or what now became Mexico City, had had engineering capabilities, allowing them to have stone withdrawing bridges without having to use wheels. Without the wheel, they were able to pull off complex engineering. The the Spanish could not make any sense of it. And I think people still today are like, how did they do it? But the Spanish knew about it because they wrote about it. And they were in awe about how these savages could have come up with something so technically brilliant. And so, yeah, just because you don't know how something could be done doesn't mean that the ancients didn't know how to do it. So that's a fun concept to play around with. John says, take care of yourself, drink some water, and get some good rest. Also, I'm on my second big flu of the year. Oof, I'm sorry to hear that, John. I hope you get better real soon. Pathfinder did something like this. In Pathfinder, aliens like the classical Greys are actually distorted stories of elves. Oh, that's cool. That is cool. All right, so everyone, thank you so much for being here, especially if you were around for both live streams. Oh boy, yeah, it's been a time. It's been a while, but thank you so much for joining me on this pedantic glazing of why Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings are so great. I'm looking forward to seeing Fellowship of the Ring extended in movie theaters. I've already done this before, but I'm gonna do it again because dang it, it's so good. And also being here for everything else. And again, thank you guys so much for your suggestions. Again, I am looking forward to taking that to the rest of the harem, so that way we can start planning out how we might do these videos, and then we can make them possible for you. Elves are aliens in Pathfinder, but their space travel stopped working, and many are just stuck away from technology. Oh, those poor elves. I says it was great being here. I had fun listening and found it helpful. Good night, everyone, and good night and good day, good morning to all of you wherever you are at. And until the next video, y'all take care and choose.